Joe Mullings from 160 Studios. Good morning. Lots going on in the medtech industry currently. Right now, we're into, what month are we in? We're early November, mid-November. And watching activity in general as we wrapped up Q3 going into Q4, there's some fascinating activities going on. Let's first start with, we just put the election behind us, thank goodness. So why is that important? Because we get some of the unpredictability, not all of it certainly, about all of the unknowns being known now, but we get some of the unpredictability out of the market, knowing that whether it's going to be Republican or Democrat, even running the entire show there. So certainly there's some questions up there, especially with the FDA, regardless of your thoughts on the potential choice of RFK. But it's just good to have that behind us. We're seeing interest rates come down, so those are going to be helpful. We're certainly seeing venture and PE, and I'll break those down in a second. And we're also seeing public markets. I think to date this year we've had 2 IPOs, with Cerebell being one of them. I believe was going to be coming out 14 to 16, debuted somewhere in the 20s, and right now still holding strong after its IPO in the high 20s. So that's definitely positive. 2 versus 0 last year. And I think the previous 2 years behind that were pretty substantial. I'll pull that stat out for you in a minute. But the PE side, the structured deals are especially important. I love to see this vehicle coming out right now in medtech. It's much required. You've got some of these, I'll call them structured build-to-buy companies. I don't want to necessarily align those directly with each other, but structured deals coming out of PE using Ajax and Duke Rowland's team over there as an example. When we look at that with Ajax, sourcing of Boston Sci, Hologic, and even partnering with KKR, I think that's very important for the industry because it's opening up collaboration between large strategics, PE partnerships, as well as emerging technologies like we've seen with like Cortex, I think, and also BSC with some structured deals. So I'm very happy about that. On the M&A side, we've seen a number of activities there. J&J obviously with Shockwave. We're going to come back to J&J in a minute. BD buys Edwards Critical Care for $4.2 billion. As we all know, Shockwave was about $13 billion. And Boston Sci buying Exonics for $3.7 billion, and BSC on Silk Road $1.2 billion. So overall, fantastic activity in the marketplace. Coming off of a somewhat meager 2023. We called it at the beginning of this year, we thought 2025 might be one of the golden years in medtech. So let's slide down into J&J here for a second. And it's just questions I have about some of the things that are going on with J&J. Here's what I love that they've done recently. The obvious acquisition of Abiomed, brilliant. Even though some people think they overpaid for it, I'm not sure that's clear yet, but you do have some other technologies coming in the market, or at least going into clinicals right now, that might rival that technology. We need to keep our eyes on with companies like Magenta and Shifamed having their own technologies, and even Puzzle Medical coming out of Canada. So that might be a little bit of a threat. But what J&J does in these situations is it'll look at a market right now that they can absolutely get a head start on. They can go ahead and get a technology that is either leading or dominating that market, and they can go ahead and flex their distribution, supply chain, manufacturing capabilities, and far reach around the globe. And they've done that with Shockwave as well. But what's really interesting here is you had limited growth with Abiomed, and you had limited growth with Shockwave. Why? Those were both publicly traded companies. And being publicly traded companies, you had to maintain share price. Now, whether or not that's good for long term, certainly for investors, it's a sensitive moment. And if your stock price starts to fall because of things you're doing, it becomes a real slippery slope. But the acquisition of Shockwave and Abiomed by J&J allowed Shockwave and Abiomed to be able now to unleash capabilities with the resources of J&J, both financial, distribution, clinical, regulatory resources, now to go ahead and pull them off the public markets, put them behind the wall of J&J, and allow them to make the massive investments and adjustments that they wouldn't have been able to make in the public market sort of purview. And I really like that move a lot for the patient, for J&J, as well as for Shockwave and Abiomed. But here's where I want to watch what happens. And I'm somewhat concerned with this, being a headhunter who spends a lot of time chatting with people who have come from high-performing environments that were part and parcel to the culture that was created in those environments. And let's take Shockwave with Doug Godshall, and let's take Abiomed with Mike Minogue. Let's start with Abiomed. If you don't know Mike Minogue, Mike was a force to be reckoned with. His approach. Some of that carries over from who he is as a person. Some of that comes over from his belief system. Some of that comes over from him being a West Point grad and active military. And Mike thought that way. He saw the hill, let's take the hill. And he also paid proper homage to the clinical evidence that had to come out. And Mike and I have chatted many times over the years. He's been in the studio as well after he left Abiomed. And Mike created a culture at Abiomed that was reflective of getting things done, was reflective of driving super, super hard, was reflective of no excuses. And that's how winning teams are built. You could look at Shockwave as well, somebody like Doug Godshall. You don't get to that $13 billion valuation by accident. You don't get there by doing normal things. You get there by a culture that says, no matter what, we're going to get there. And it's going to come with sacrifices. It's going to come with prioritization. It's going to come with doing things that nobody was willing to do before in that category. So where am I going with this? I'm going this where it's going to be interesting to watch with what J&J has done. It's taken these elite performing organizations that it clearly believed in itself to the tune of $16 billion and $13 billion. And their therapies are best in class and actually first in class as well. And J&J has made the decision now to brand identify its medtech business as J&J Medtech. And look, I get some of it with Ethicon, DePuy, Synthase, Biosense Webster, but I'm just not tracking on where Abiomed is and where Shockwave is today, where you're taking this elite organization, these elite performers, and when the acquisition happened, you're always going to get some people who are going to leave because they don't want to be part of a bigger machine, or it's more so they're cashing their check and they might be done, they're cashing their check and they want to go find another startup or emerging tech company. But there's a large portion of that organization that is not ready to leave yet, is at a point in their career where they still hold all of that identity, all of that tribal feel, and tribal's not bad in this situation, all that tribal feel of let's effing go. And it comes with a name. It comes with a label. It comes with a moniker. It comes with an identity. And I'm just curious what J&J is prepared to accept when you start to wash out Abiomed into just another J&J company by the label, and words matter. Shockwave by the label, and words matter. Because I'm not sure it was a great decision, and I think it was probably a PwC or a McKinsey or a Deloitte decision that for some reason or another broadly, somebody finally got their way after years of lobbying J&J brass about rebranding or taking away the name of Abiomed and taking away the name of Shockwaves. And look, I understand conformity is really important in order Conformity equals collaboration, equals a joint vision, equals getting things done at mass, right? We live in large groups. We have to do things together as a large group. I get it. But you have to keep in mind that the super creatives, which Shockwave was, the super creatives, which Abiomed was, they generally, super creative people, prefer to live in exile. Super creative people like to be broken off from the pack to keep doing their super creative things. And when you take the name of Abiomed away and or Shockwave away in this instance, and now you're saying you're no longer known as that, at least outwardly, there's going to be, in my estimation, from the seat I've sat in over 34 years as a headhunter, there's going to be a little bit of pushback on that and a little bit of earlier exit out of, now I'm just J&J, I'm no longer Abiomed with my brand and colors that I wore so proudly, or Shockwave. So I get part of it. You want to bring them into the family to allow that Shockwave innovation to spread. You want to bring Abiomed into the family, allow that innovation to spread. But I find that you can't get innovation to spread and you can't get greatness to spread by pulling everybody into the equal label you want to give them. And I think that's a statement that transcends just medical device acquisitions. The dilution of insane performance and insane talent comes at an expense. And when large strategics are already struggling with innovation, and large strategics are already struggling with keeping the people who, upon an acquisition, want to remain to innovate. And I love the fact that J&J has said they were going to leave these companies alone like they did Biosense Webster. They're going to let them stand by themselves so they can keep innovating, but we're only going to change your name. And I think that comes at an expense. And it might not be evident right away. But I think whenever you try and dilute out that greatness, everything's gradual until it's sudden. And now you're just another one of the population when just a year ago you were validated as being great and innovative and appreciated the breakaway notoriety about what you've done. So let's watch that closely. It might be another HBS study. But the questions are, how do you maintain the legacy activities that were part of the critical culture that created the value? What do you do about that loss of brand equity in the mind of the performers? There was a line I looked up yesterday in the classic book, 1984 by George Orwell, that reminded us that who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past. So if you're taking away my name, are you taking away part of my history? Are you erasing my past so you can control the future? Something to think about. I'm Joe Mullings from 160 Studios. Be well.